Welcome to our Monday night class. Today we're speaking about the laws of Yichud, the laws of seclusion. Being secluded alone in a room with a lady, a man with a lady with a man. What are the leniencies? What is not allowed? Where is there machlok and Ashkenazim, Sfaradim? We're going to get to the bottom of the whole thing. Today, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll speak mostly about the prohibited cases. And then we're going to start talking about the permitted cases, but I think we're going to have to do a part 2. Okay, so Yichud is the word I'm going to use a lot in this class. Yichud means seclusion. So get familiar with this word, B'ezrat Hashem. Yichud means seclusion. Now, it's the concept that we're talking about is that there is a prohibition. We're going to see exactly where in the Torah that you're not allowed to be secluded with the opposite gender. And obviously the main concern is that maybe some sin is going to occur. So therefore, that's why we're going to see there's a source to prohibit such a thing. So it comes out that not just the act is forbidden, obviously somebody who does a sinful act, with someone who's erva means someone who is forbidden to you. A married lady, a woman who's nidah, any of something of the sort, your aunt, and so on and so forth. All those cases are a situation where it's forbidden to do a sinful act with them. But more than that, there's also another prohibition of even being in a situation where it could lead to such a thing. And that is what Yichud is. Being in a situation where you're alone, where it could lead to things. So you're in a closed room. You're in not even a closed room. Let's say you're in an open field and there's nobody around you. You're upstate on some field where there's not a soul nearby. This is also applicable to laws of Yichud. Or you're at night, even if you're in the city, you're in the neighborhood, but you're on some alley, you're in some street where there's nobody there. It's late at night, right? You're parked somewhere and it's late at night. There's nobody passing by. It's also a potential problem of Yichud. So now, what the sages tell us in the Tosefta and in Masechet Ketubot and in Masechet Eruvin and in Masechet Nidah, many places in Shas, there is a concept called en apotropos la'arayot. A lot of people make a mistake about this. There is no guardian when it comes to immorality. No one can claim, I am a guardian over myself when it comes to immorality. I know better. I will not fall, Rabbi. Don't worry. I'll take the risks. There is no such thing. The Gemara says, there is no such a thing that a person can claim for himself that he is immune. Nobody is immune, and nobody is a gladiator. Nobody is better than anybody else to say, I am above the law. So now, we have to understand where is the source that you can't be secluded with a lady. So, or a lady with a man. So, the Gemara says in Masechet Avodah Zarah, Daf Lamed Vav, on 36b, it says, Yichud bat Yisrael d'oraitahi. Doing seclusion with a Jewish lady, meaning someone who's forbidden to you, a lady who's nidah, a married woman. How do we know that it's forbidden from the Torah to be secluded with her? Dama Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Shimon ben Yohatzadak. Because it says, Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yohatzadak, Remez liyichud min Torah minayin. Where do we have a hint that seclusion is forbidden? Because the pasuk says in Devarim Yud Gimel Zayin, chapter 13, pasuk 7. It says over there, Ki sitcha achicha ben imecha. When your brother from your mother, right? The Torah is talking about your half brother from your mother. When he will come and convince you to do avodah zarah, you go and you rat him out and you punish him. So what is this Torah talking about? Talking about where your half brother from your mother goes and tries to convince you to go do avodah zarah. It's called a mesit. Mesit means as a seducer, a person who tries to make you go off derech, and he does it privately. He doesn't do it in the public. He's not a preacher, rather he does it privately. So the Gemara asks, why is the Torah talking about when my half brother from my mother? Why only a half-brother from my mother? Maybe my half-brother from my father also could try to convince me to do avodah zarah. So the Gemara says, no, it's talking about the most common situation. Where do you have multiple people living together in one place? Brothers living with their mom all together, it's most likely where brothers will speak to each other when they all live together with their mom. But it's unlikely that a man will be in his mom's house, not his mom's house, in his father's house, and his brothers there will try to seduce him into doing avodah zarah. So you see from here, the Gemara says this is a hint That where are you allowed to do yichud? In your mother's house. There's no yichud with your mother. But other arayot, other ladies, you shouldn't do yichud with. This is the hint in the Torah that you're not allowed to be secluded with anyone besides for your mother. We're going to see there's other situations where seclusion is permitted, but this is the source in the Gemara Masechet Avodah Zarah that yichud is not allowed. Rashi says in Masechet Shabbat, yichud is a surah from the Torah. Rashi says clearly, putting yourself in a secluded room with the opposite gender is a prohibition from the Torah. And they quote this pasuk, he quotes the Gemara Kiddushin, he quotes this pasuk about when your half-brother from your mother will seduce you to do Avodah Zarah. The Rambam writes that the Isur Yichud is Asur Midivrei Kabbalah. Midivrei Kabbalah means from the prophets. But the question is, over here, there is no prophets. We quote a pasuk from Sefer Dvarim. So people want to say, a lot of Mefarshim want to say that Rambam means whenever the Torah is not giving you a clear-cut prohibition, rather the Gemara just gave a remez, so he calls it Midivrei Kabbalah. The Gemara Masechet Sanhedrin says, there was a famous story with the children of David HaMelech. David HaMelech had many wives, and he had many different kids. And one of them he was called Amnon. Amnon had a great desire for his half-sister called Tamar. She was someone who he desired greatly. So much so that the prophets tell us in Shmuel Aleph, Sefer Shmuel Aleph, that what happened, he had such a desire for her that he even pretended to be sick. He pretended to be sick and he asked that Tamar should come and make food for him and give him help and make him feel better. And through this, he got the opportunity to be secluded with her, and he ended up doing a sinful act with her. The Torah says afterwards that he hated her. He hated her very, very much. After he got what he wanted, he got his lust over with. He hated her and he threw her away. He went and he kicked her out, and he says, "I'm not even going to marry you. I'm not even going to, take you as a wife. I want you out of my life." Ends up being, she went in public and she said to everybody what happened to her, how she was defiled, and she was mourning in public. And the Gemara says, in Masechet Sanhedrin, Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, it says, Tana Mishmei Yeshua ben Karcha, Geder Gadol Gadar Tamar B'ota Sha'ah. Because of what Tamar did, they started making new rules and laws of seclusion. What did they say? They said that if the daughter of a king, look what happened to her, right? The daughter of a king, King David's daughter, look what happened to her. How much more so simple people things like this could happen to? The Gemara says, if this lady, like she was so tznuah, Tamar, daughter of David HaMelech. David HaMelech is one of the legs of the heavenly throne. We make a blessing after that. Baruch atah Hashem Magen David. He was a great tzaddik. And what? His daughter also fell in the laws of seclusion and ended up having a sinful act happen to her. So how much more so, less religious women, we have to be more concerned about them. And then the Gemara says, Amar Yud Amar Rav, in that moment they made Yichud even by Pnuya. Until that point, where was Yichud applicable to? It was only applicable to Arayot, but a single man, a single lady. Is it a surah to do seclusion there also? It wasn't until this happened, because Tamar and Amnon, they were single guy, single lady, and it happened in sinful act. So what happened? So you see from here that even in that moment, they made it that you're not allowed to do yichud even by a single lady, a single girl. But today, all single girls are also nida, so they're erva, they're arayot anyways. They're forbidden to you because of that anyways.
Back then they weren't?
There were situations, maybe not, yeah. So, Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel added another decree. What decree did they add? The Gemara Masechet Avodah Zarah says they made a decree on goyot. Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel said you're also not allowed to be secluded with a goya. So therefore, you see that is their Rabbanan, right? They decreed from the Torah comes out. It was only by arayot, forbidden relationships, is where you're not allowed to be secluded. But then they added a single girl, Jewish girl, and then they added, Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel added, even with a goya, you're not allowed to be secluded with. Says the Shulchan Aruch in Even Ezer, Siman Chaf Bet, Seif Bet, it says, when the story of Amnon and Tamar happened, King David and his rabbis and his beddin, they made a decree to not seclude single guy with a single girl. And even so, she's not erva, they still added her in the list. And then Shammai and Hillel made it asur also with a goya. So Shulchan Aruch says the goya and single girl are also on the list of forbidden to be doing seclusion with. Now let's say you have multiple people in a room. Multiple people in the secluded room. When is there leniency? When there's more than just one guy and one girl. So the Mishnah says like this in Masechet Kiddushin Daf Pei. Pei Amud Bet. It says, Lo yitiyached adam mishtei nashim. A man should not seclude himself with two ladies. Aval isha achad mityached im shnei anashim. But one woman is allowed to be secluded with two men. So the Gemara says in Masechet Kiddushin that what happens? Amar Yehuda Marav, Lo shanu ele b'ksherim. This halacha only applies when they're kosher men. What did we say? There's a leniency when one lady with two men. The Gemara says this only applies when there is two kosher men, they're religious men. But if they're prutzim, if they're people who are very, very low level religion, they're people who are outwardly immoral. Everybody knows they don't hold to high standards of morals. So over there, the Gemara says, even there will be 10 men. One woman with 10 men who are not having a high level of moral standards, they're very immoral. Even 10 men, it will be forbidden to be with one lady. Why? Because the Gemara says, Amar Yosef, if you have 10 ganavim, 10 robbers come to steal one big beam. Let's say they came to a construction site and they wanted to steal a steel beam. How could you pick up a steel beam? You need 10 people to pick up a steel beam, or a wood beam, right? So the Gemara says, but we see that 10 people get together and they steal in front of each other and they don't care. They're all together and they don't mind. They're not embarrassed of one another. So therefore, over here, if you have 10 immoral men with one lady, they could do a sin. They won't be embarrassed from each other. Just like by robbers, they're also not embarrassed of each other. So the Gemara says, it only applies when they're kosher men, two men and one lady. Amar Yehuda Marav, the Gemara says further that this is only by the city. But if it's in the traveling, if you're in the paths that are between cities, you're not exactly in the city, you need 3 people. Why? Because if you have 2 men and one lady, what if one has to go to the bathroom? So he's going to have to go far away, and they're going to end up having Yichud, 1 man, 1 lady. So therefore, when you're traveling on the way and there's no real bathrooms, you would need 3 men and 1 lady in order to be able to avoid Yichud. Now, the Gemara says an interesting story. Who is considered kosher? What level of standards of morality do you have to be under the leniency of 2 men and 1 lady? So the Gemara says a story. Rav and Yehuda, the Gemara says Rav and Yehuda were traveling on the way. And then all of a sudden they were traveling, walking on the path, and nobody was around them. And all of a sudden there was a lady. A lady came and she started walking alongside them. So the Gemara says, Amar le Rav, le Yehuda. Rav told her, Yehuda, dal karecha. He says, Davai, bistra, let's go fast. Why? He says, Mikme Gehenam, we have to go faster. We have to go faster than Gehenam. Meaning, because if we stay here, we're going to go to Gehenam. Because we're going to be we said in between cities, right? When there's no formal bathroom, what do we say? You need 3 men and 1 lady. Here, there was 2 men and 1 lady. So it's a sur, it's Yichud. So therefore, he said, let's go faster. So I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It wasn't the city. It wasn't the city. They were allowed to have 2 men and 1 lady. So why did they say go fast? So the Gemara says, the Gemara says, oh, but we're kosher people. We're good people. We're allowed to have 2 men and 1 lady. No, it's not Yehud. So the Gemara says, Rav told him, no. Who says we're considered kosher? Who's considered kosher? Only Rabbi Chanina Bar Papi and his friends, like Rav Tzadok and Rav Kahana. But me and you, Rav and Rabbi Yehuda, we're not considered kosher. So we see from this Gemara that what? That if the sages in the Gemara are not considered kosher people, they're not considered people who are high-level moral standards, so how could it be that what? That us today, we're not on their level, so of course we also are not going to have this leniency of 2 men and 1 lady. Who is Rav Tzadok and Rav Kahana? They said, who is going to have the leniency of 2 men and 1 lady? Rav Tzadok and Rav Kahana. Who are these 2 rabbis, Rav Tzadok and Rav Kahana? So the Gemara says about Rav Tzadok and Rav Kahana, unbelievable stories, how much they went out of their way to avoid doing immorality. So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says, there was a story with Rabbi Chanina Bar Papi. Rabbi Chanina Bar Papi, there was a lady who came to him and told him, I wanted to do a sin with you. I want to do an immoral act. So the Gemara says, Amar Milta, in the Gemara Secrecy Kiddushin 39b, it says, Amar Milta, he said something. He said Hashem's name, some commentaries say, and he made his whole body covered with shichna v'chiba. He made his whole body covered with boils and scabs. He made himself ugly in order that he shouldn't be able to do a sin. So the Gemara says that afterwards, Avda ihi milta v'itase, she also said something. She said witchcraft and she healed him. And that way he was beautiful again. He was normal. Then what happened? Arak tasha ba'u b'nei bani. The Gemara says he ran to a certain bathhouse. that was very, very spooky, and people knew there was a lot of demons there. It was a very scary place. He ran away over there and he hid there in order that she shouldn't chase him and she shouldn't do an immoral act with him. So what do you see from here? That Rav Chanina Bar Papi was such a tzaddik. He made himself get boils and scabs in order not to do a sin. And even after, when she healed him during witchcraft, he ran away to a very spooky, haunted place in order that what? He shouldn't do a sin with her and she shouldn't chase him. So a person who goes and does those extreme lengths to save himself from sin, he's a great tzaddik. And says the Gemara, that's who's considered a moral person. Anybody who is less than that is considered immoral, and therefore you're not allowed to have the leniency of 2 men and 1 lady. The Gemara says also a case of Rav Tzadok. There's a story of Rav Tzadok. Rav Tzadok, he was around a certain lady, and this lady came to him and she said, I want to do an immoral act with you. And then he told her, Chalash libi li libai, I'm very weak, my heart is weak, I didn't eat something today, so therefore I don't have strength to do the immoral act. He was telling her, like, you have to feed me. So she said to him, she said to him, only thing I have to eat is some non-kosher meat. So he said to her, okay, no problem. It's okay. If I'm willing to do an act with you, it means, who cares, right? If people who do these kind of things, they also eat this kind of food. What does it make a difference if it's kosher or not kosher? So he told her these things and she started cooking the meat for him. She turned on the fire, she turned on the oven, and then she sees that Rav Tzadok starts climbing into the oven. He goes inside the oven with the fire. She says to him, he says, what is this? You jump into the oven, the fire, you're going to kill yourself. Well, what's going on over here? So he said to her, the person who does this immoral act, this is where he goes. This is what he's going to happen to him. He's going to go to Gehenna. He's going to go in the fire. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going there right now. So she said to him, if I would have known that this would happen to you, this is what you would do, so I would never bother you. I wouldn't ask you to do anything. So then that's Rav Tzadok. He was willing to put himself in an oven of fire and die and not to go do this immoral act. Then we spoke about Rav Kahana, right? Rav Kahana, what was the story with him? Rav Kahana, the Gemara says in the same Gemara Masechet Kiddushin, that there was a lady who came to him and said, I want to do a sin with you. So he said to her, Izil ikshad nafsha. He says, 1 second, okay, I'll be with you. 1 second, let me just go to the powder room. Let me go to the mirror. Let me fix myself up. He went to the other room and he jumped out of the window. He jumped out of the window off the roof onto the ground. He was on the way to the ground. You would probably think you would get injured if you jump out of, let's say, a 3rd story, 2nd story building. What happened? Says all of a sudden, Ata Eliyahu Kable. The Gemara says Eliyahu Navi came and he caught him and he saved him from getting injured. So the Gemara says that Eliyahu Navi told Rav Kahana, Eterchan arba ma'e parseh. You bothered me. You made me travel 400 parsaot. I traveled a tremendous distance all of a sudden in 1 second to come save you, so you shouldn't get hurt. Rav Kahana said, why am I in this situation? Why did this happen to me? Why did this lady come to do a sin and I had to jump out a window? So he said to him, it's because Lava Niyuta. Rav Kahana said of Eliyahu Navi, you can't blame me that I made you get bothered. Look what happened to me. I'm poor. I have to sell my baskets to women. This is what happens. So Eliyahu Navi says, you know what? You're right. I can't blame you for making me travel all this way. He gave him a chest full of dinars. He gave him a whole chest full of money. Why? Because he felt bad for him that he was poor and he had to sell baskets to women. And when you sell baskets to women, stuff like this happens. So Eliyahu Navi says, you're right. I don't want this to happen to you again. So he gave him a lot of money. So he doesn't have to do this anymore. So you see from here what? These great sages, they went extreme lengths to avoid immorality, and therefore the Gemara says, the Rabbi and Yehud says, they're the people who have the leniency of 2 men, 1 lady, but other people don't. What did the Rambam say? The Rambam says, Lo titeched isha achat afilu me'anashim arbeh. 1 lady cannot seclude herself with a lot of men. Even if there's 2, 3 men, doesn't make a difference. Only who gets the leniency of 2 men, 1 lady? Only ksherim, says the Rambam. Who are ksherim? Rav Tzadok, Rav Kahana, Rav Chanina Bar Papi, these great sages who did these great things. But anybody else, we're all considered not ksherim. Says the Rambam, and so too, Lo yitached ish echad afilu min nashim arbeh. 1 man with multiple women also, he cannot be secluded with them. So a person's in a house, a person's in a room with a lot of ladies who are strangers to him. They're all married ladies, or they're all arayot to him, or even if they're single ladies. Even though there's many ladies, but he's the only man, it's also asur because of Yichud. According to Rambam. The Rosh argues, the Rosh says, no, you're allowed to have 2 men, 1 lady. And the Mishnah says that, and Rashi also says that that there's another leniency where if you have another man with 2 women, right? Right? When we said 1 man, 1 lady, 2 men, right? What if there's 3 or 4? So they'll also be permitted over there. So it comes out Machlokes Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. Shulchan Aruch says like the Rambam, 2 men, 1 lady, or 1 man, multiple ladies, there's no leniency. But the Ramah says no, 1 lady is allowed to be in a room with 2 men. He follows the lenient opinion, like the Rosh. And he says, and some say 1 man with many ladies is also permitted. But according to Sfaradim, halacha is seclusion with 1 man, many ladies, or 1 woman, many men is not allowed. Only Ashkenazim will be permitted.
Rabbi, what does seclusion mean?
Seclusion means being alone in a room.
What if the room is open for the public?
Okay, fine. We're talking about in a closed room or in a room where nobody will most likely will not enter.
What do you mean the Ashkenazi is separate to that? What do you mean?
What?
You said the Ashkenazi is secluded?
Ashkenazim are more lenient in these prohibitions.
What about cameras? Do cameras count?
All the cases I'm talking about now is without leniency. Is without something helping the situation. It's talking about it's a locked door, let's say, or it's a door that even if you leave it open, nobody's passing by. That's the situations I'm talking about that will be a sewer. We're going to get to the leniencies in a little bit. Okay, so now we're moving on. Now, says the Ramah, okay, fine. Good. Shulchan Aruch says, Nashim harbe, Nashim harbe. Shulchan Aruch says, what about many men and many ladies in 1 room? It's permitted. There's no Yichud problem. How many? Some lenient opinions say 2 men, 2 ladies is good enough. Some argue and say, no, you need 3 and 3. But if someone who wants to be lenient and follow 2 and 2, it's permitted, it's allowed. How old is there the law of Yichud apply to? Anybody know? Let's say you're alone in a room with a lady. How young is the lady
9.
to be considered Yichud?
3 years old.
6.
Well, there's different opinions.
You say 9. I'm talking about a lady. A guy, full-grown man, and there's a lady in the room. How young does it have to be does the woman have to be not to be Yichud? 12. You say 12. You said 3.
6.
That's just
6.
3-year-old and a grown man.
Listen. Today,
That's what I'm like.
You mentioned that
it's
before,
weird.
about something about the niece. So you said, I think 5 years old.
good. Okay. So now Shulchan Aruch says like this: a child that is younger than 3 years old, it is mutar to do yichud with him. So if the child who's a girl is older than 3, it's a problem of yichud. What about the other way around? A lady with a man, how young does the man have to be for not a problem of yichud? 9. Very good. Shulchan Aruch says if the child, the boy, is younger than 9 years old, and there's a full-grown lady, there is no problem with yichud. But if the child is older than 9 years old, there is a problem with yichud. Where does this happen a lot? Babysitters. Babysitters happens. What if you have 1 son, and he's 10 years old, and you hire a babysitter, she's 17 years old, and they come, you're on the video. They come to babysit, and she's there till late at night. The husband and the wife come home very late after a wedding. So what happens? All this time, it's yichud. They have to find a solution. We're going to give a solution for the babysitter case. We're going to give a solution, but there is a problem because he's older than 9 years old. Yes, Yosef. What did you want to say?
Like the kid is in his own room. The girl, they're in the same house, but they're in the
Wish he's in his own room.
So what's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is they're in an area alone. They're in an area alone.
parents can come in.
10 years old is any minute.
No, any minute. What do you mean? They just served plof. It's 11 o'clock. They're not going anywhere.
So it's better to leave the kid alone in the house than have.
Oh, no. We're going to give a different solution, but I'm just telling you there is a problem.
Wait, what about if
Well, the kid could do even crazier stuff by himself than having a woman watch him.
Rabbi, what if they're cousins? Will that matter?
No.
Like have a older.
What's not Baharians, David? What?
Okay, so now,
Surveillance.
Now that's in regards to the age. What about family? Is there yichud by family? Tzaddik, I'll get you a question after. I'm sorry. Yeah, by family, the Gemara says in Masechet Kiddushin, Pei Amud Bet, Mitiyached Adam im imo ve'im bito. A man is allowed to be secluded with his mother. There's no problem yichud by your mother, and there's no problem seclusion with your daughter. A father is allowed to be in the same house alone with his daughter. So too, a woman who's nidah, meaning a husband and a wife, and the wife is nidah. Also, over there, it is permitted to do yichud. What? Good. The Beit Chadash says that as far down, as far up you want to go, also permitted. Let's say it's your grandmother, your great-grandmother. All the way around, the grandfather with his granddaughter, or whatever, or his great-granddaughter, also will be permitted just like daughter is permitted. The Gemara says, Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Pei Aleph Amud Bet, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Aseh, Mityached Adam im achoto. A person's allowed to do yichud with his sister. However, Vedar im imo ve'im bito, but he's allowed to live with his father, with his mother and his daughter. What does that mean? Rashi says, with your sister, you're allowed to be secluded temporarily, but you're not allowed to live in the same house as your sister, just like you would live in your mom's house or in your daughter's house. Meaning, in your mom's house, your daughter's house, you can live there as long as you want, even if there's yichud, there's no problem, right? But with your sister, you're only allowed to do yichud, but you can't live with her in the same house. Let's say they go and rent an apartment in the city. He goes to college, she goes to college, and they live in the same apartment. You would not be allowed to go and live in the same apartment, a brother and a sister. Even though they're allowed to do yichud, but they're not allowed to live together in the same place because there is still a chashash of sin. Yes?
What if it's a big age gap? For example, one was 20 years older than the other. And
What did we say? What did we say? How young does they have to be for it to be yichud applicable? 3 years old, right? Even if the guy is 50, Shulchan Aruch says he's not allowed to be with a 3-year-old for yichud. So it doesn't make a difference.
She has little kids at home.
Good. So there is a leniency of a shomer, of somebody who's a guardian, quote unquote. Somebody who's under the age of yichud. What do we say the age of yichud is for a boy? 9. Let's say you have a boy who's 7 years old. She has a 7-year-old son, and he lives with her, right? So he's considered someone that there's no problem yichud with, so he could be a shomer. He understands things, right? He understands what he sees. So therefore, he could be considered, that would be one leniency we'll talk about later, that there is a concept of having a shomer. Okay, fine. So comes out, Shulchan Aruch says, you're not allowed to live in the same house as your sister when you and her are alone. What is living? How long? 30 days. Poskim say 30 days is the longest a person can be in the same house as a sister alone. Now, how long is there a prohibition of yichud? Let's say I'm in a room. Happens a lot by the elevator, right? I go into the elevator, there's a lady there. We said if she's a goya, is there yichud? Yes, goya, there's yichud. If she's a single Jewish girl, is there yichud? Yes, there's yichud. So how long am I not allowed to be with her in a room? Even 1 second is not allowed? What's the whole reason you're not allowed to do yichud? Is because you might do a sinful act. How long is that?
10 seconds.
10 seconds?
Yeah, what if the elevator?
Depends, Rabbi. Every guy's different.
What if the elevator got trapped?
In the Gemara Masechet Sotah, they give like 9 opinions.
No, as long as it takes around to go a day, which is 10 seconds.
That's Gemara Masechet Sotah. Somebody learn Masechet Sotah. Chazak Baruch.
What if the elevator got trapped?
But that's only one opinion. If you read a few lines later, you're going to see there's like 9 opinions. No, so what do we come out of halacha? How long do you guys say? A minute? 1 millisecond? How? The guy can't even open his belt in 1 millisecond. What do you mean?
So that's why I said 10 seconds. That's it.
Half a minute.
Half a minute? Okay, fine. The Gemara says, guys, gotta be mature. Be mature. I trust you guys. The Gemara says in the name of Rabbi Kiva, Kedei litzlot beitza ulegam'a. In order, the time it takes to fry an egg and to swallow it. How long is that?
It's cooking it. 10 seconds.
20 minutes?
10 seconds.
Rabbi, you eat it raw.
No, not raw. Fry an egg and eat it. You don't fry your eggs in the morning?
Eat it raw.
How long it takes you to fry your eggs in the morning? 1 minute, 2 minutes, no? You don't eat it straight from the pan kacha, right? You wait a little bit, cool down, and then you eat it. 3 minutes, you say?
10 minutes. Forgot the mazon too.
Wow, 10 minutes. You're a very lenient rabbi. It's not a steak. Okay, so the Minhat Yitzchak, Rav Weiss writes that you have 5 minutes. 5 minutes is the time. It is, once you go 5 minutes secluded in the room, it's Yisur Yichud. Anything less is not necessarily Yisur Yichud. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, he says maybe you could be lenient, to be a little bit more. He says because it's not just the amount of time it takes to do the act, it's not just you go up to somebody, do an act, you have to speak, you have to convince them, it's a lot of other stuff to do. So it could be more than 5 minutes, he says. Rav Yashiv said it was 1.5 minutes, and Yehud Yosef says 3 minutes. 3 minutes, he says, Yehud Yosef.
What about your car with tents?
Yeah, car.
Oh.
Not to go.
Let's talk about a car without tints, first of all. Where, let's say a guy takes out a girl on a date, and he goes with her in a car. Is it Yehud? Well, you'll say, it's not Yehud, because it's not secluded, because there's windows. So everybody could see what's going on inside the car, right? But what about late at night? When we say we're going to see there's a leniency when you leave the door open. We're going to see, do you have to leave the door open literally, or do you have to leave it unlocked? Whatever it is, maybe you could say the same thing applies by a window, just like by a door open. If there's a leniency, there's no problem Yichud. So too, when there's a window, there's also a leniency Yichud. However, by the door and the window, the leniency only applies when there's going to be people that might come in. There's going to be people passing by. What if you're late at night? It's 11 o'clock at night. I'm on some random street over here on Main Street. I'm parked by a tree. Everybody's home. Nobody's going to walk outside. On a side street next to my house, some dead end, some street that barely during the day few people walk by. How much more so at night nobody walks by. So therefore it's a Yichud. Over there is Yichud. In that case, David, you're listening. A guy has a girl in his car.
I seen
right? Late at night, there's nobody on the street. It's Yichud. It's Yichud.
Oh, what about the dog walkers?
How often do you have to have people passing by? We're going to talk about it.
Even if people are passing by, they're not going to do anything. You know when people do things in their car and you just walk by, you don't stop them.
Unless I know the car, I go up to them.
How do you have a Toyota Camry?
You remember that time I called that guy?
If you have a Toyota Camry,
There you go. Remember that guy?
Okay, fine.
Why is your car funky?
So now, what about an elevator? Is a person allowed to go into an elevator with a goya?
Elevators have cameras, yeah.
With a goya, or with another Jewish lady, married lady, a single lady? Is he allowed to go in the elevator? What do you guys say?
More than 4 people,
I
yeah.
think as
Or
long
more
as
than
you
2
can
people,
pay.
yeah.
Elevator always open.
Yeah, it's not 5 minutes.
No, why? Let's say I'm going to the top floor of a very tall building. There's 60 floors.
It takes 10 minutes to go up there.
First of all, it takes 2 seconds.
It goes fast.
take a stairs.
Let's say it'll take 3 minutes. Yehud Yosef said 3 minutes. So it'll take longer than 3 minutes.
There's a chance of someone opening the door.
Very good.
Camera.
Unless you press stop.
Minhat Ish says that since there's a possibility that the doors will open at any floor and it's not in your control, therefore it will be permitted to go into a elevator. But Yehud Yosef says, however, that this is only by someone who thinks that there won't be a problem of Yichud strictly, but if there's someone who's prutza, someone who's immoral, someone dressed immodestly, someone dressed that you'll probably look at her, you'll probably think bad things, so it's better to avoid going to the elevator. But if strictly speaking, if there's only problem is Yichud, then there'll be no problem of the elevator. Okay, fine. Now, what about a Uber? Right? Let's say a lady wants to take a Uber late at night. Or a man wants to take an Uber and the Uber is a lady. Or you have sometimes a bus, or you have what's called a taxi. So all these cases, it is also applicable Yichud if there's nobody passing by. Yakut Yosef writes, you need to have people passing by, whether walking or cars, every 3 minutes. If you're in a place where there is not people passing by every 3 minutes, it is Yichud to be in that car on that road that is nobody there.
Is it direct sin to be in Yichud, or is it just like a rabbi's put like?
We said with Arayot, it is Isur Torah. With a lady who's Nida, with a lady who is in a immoral relationship to you, a married woman, there will be Isur Torah. By a single lady who's not in Nida, which is not doesn't exist today, basically, it will be Isur Rabbanan, and by a Goya, it will be Isur Rabbanan. But a guy with a Jewish girl, it is Isur Torah.
Why would a guy and his wife who is Nida be not Yichud then?
Oh, good question.
To a guy who is
Good question. So that is a Tosafot basically. Tosafot says it's allowed because it will be permitted very soon.
So what? If I'm gonna marry this girl and
You don't know that.
why not?
You spoke to her father?
Who cares about her father?
Even then, it's not a guarantee.
It's not a guarantee.
It's not even her father.
Even after Khan, it's not a guarantee.
No, forget about Khan. Hayam Gudesh leave. Bam, right there.
Nobody does that. Vegas man chashmei bar minan chemirachem Vegas.
Seriously, they do that right away. It's possible.
Okay, fine. Now I want to end off with the leniency. Where is there going to be a leniency? There's a leniency by having the door open. Where did we get this from? So the Gemara says, Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Pei Aleph. Oh, actually, before we get to this, I wanted to explain why did we say by family? Why by family is it allowed? There's no Yichud by the father with the daughter or the son with the mother. So the Gemara says, Masechet Sanhedrin, that the Anshe Knesset Gdolah, they actually got rid of the Yetzer Hara for a lot of things. They got rid of the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. And they saw it in the image of a lion, and they prayed, and they asked Hashem to get rid of it. And then they wanted to get rid of the Yetzer Hara for immorality. And the Gemara says that even they got rid of it, and nobody wanted to be with their wives, to the point where even chickens didn't lay eggs. That's how much Yetzer Hara they got rid of. They saw the world couldn't continue, so they only weakened it. But they did not get rid of it entirely. That's why there is less Yetzer Hara for a son with the mother or the father with the daughter, but by the sister, we said you're not allowed to live in the same house more than 30 days. It's just interesting Gemara. Yeah. So now, what about the door? The Gemara says, Masechet Kiddushin Daf Pei Aleph Amud Aleph says, Amar Rav Yosef, Petach Patuach Reshut Rabim, a door that is open to the public domain, Ein Choshishin Mishum Yichud, there is no worry about seclusion. The Shulchan Aruch says the same thing. A house that has its door open to the Reshut Rabim, there is no problem of Yichud. Now the question is, does the door have to be open literally, or is it enough that the door is unlocked? Pitchei Tshuva says it's a machloket. What is the words of the Gemara? Pay attention to the words of the Gemara. Petach patuach. What does that mean? A opening that is open. Sounds like it's open, but if it's closed, it's no bueno. So then the Gemara said, then the Pitchei Tshuva quotes the Rashba and the Ritbaz, who say that no, that even if it's closed, as long as it's unlocked, and someone could just walk right in, it is also permitted. So that's machloket. And what should we do? We should be machmir. You should be machmir and try to have the door actually open. But if it's Isur D'Rabbanan, right? What's the case of Isur D'Rabbanan? Goya. We said Goya is only Yichud D'Rabbanan. So let's say you have a cleaning lady. Everybody went to work except for you. Yichud. What are we going to do? What? Two cleaning ladies? Wow. So, if we were blessed with two cleaning ladies, what did Shulchan Aruch say? Shulchan Aruch said 1 man, 2 ladies is okay? Yeah. Even the Gemara said 1 man, 2 ladies is no good. So what do we do with 1 man, 2 ladies, 2 goyot? It's Isur Darabanan. Over there, you can be lenient to just have the door unlocked. There, you could be because it's only Rabbanan. But Yichud Doraita, you should leave the door open. You should leave the door open. Okay? Fine.
What about a janitor, like a custodian? It's his job to be like late at night and.
Okay.
and
What are you doing in
working.
school late at night?
You're a custodian, whatever you're doing, you fixing pipes or whatever, and then a girl
No,
happens
but that's
to
your
be
job.
there.
It's different, no?
So you have to, if it's late at night, the door thing is not going to help.
What if you come into a customer's house? You gotta fix a pipe.
Plumber.
That's a problem. That's a problem.
Tell them to leave the door unlocked.
No, but if it's during the day, Rabotai, please.
No, it's a
Yeah, no, he's
Serious
that's the
question.
point, Rabbi.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, leave the door wide open.
So if it's during the day, you're right, leaving the door open would help because somebody could walk in or somebody could pass by and see. But at night, what does it help the door? What does it help? Who's gonna come in? Nobody's gonna come in.
Sometimes you're gonna look bad if you tell a client leave your door open. You know.
Okay, but over there we have to keep the mitzvot. What do I care? My customer says if I have to keep the mitzvot, right? It's a test in emunah. Yeah.
Does it apply that her husband's in the city though?
Oh, that's okay. Maybe we have to ask. Does that apply by goyot? By Jews, you're right. That is a leniency. We're going to talk about it next time. But that is such a leniency. But by goyot, we have to see if that works. But yeah, that may be a way to solve that problem. Yes. I know I didn't let you ask a question for a long time. Sorry.
So a few months ago, my brothers and my cousins, they went to the movies, and if they're over 10 years old, they have to pay they have to take a vaccine shot, and they.
Is this a Yichud question? If not, so then after, okay? Hazak Baruch. Skei mitzvot. So now, the discussion becomes, what if somebody has keys? Can I leave the door unlocked? Because I know family members have keys and they just come into the door without ringing, without any interruption, without any prior knocking or prior announcement. Over there, the poskim say that it will be also permitted if people have keys and they're going to walk in with unannounced. So over there, even the door is locked, it will be permitted because people have keys. Yes?
What about you put with a medical professional? You're there, you say it's a doctor or a medical technician.
Yeah, there was a question. I saw a question. Someone asked a question like this. He says, a lady's going to get hypnotized by a hypnotist and he's a man. Would there be a problem Yichud? There be a problem Yichud? Yes, there will be a problem Yichud. What is the solution? The solution is either A, you let the husband sit there with her the whole time in the room. B, the door is open, or at least the door is unlocked, and there's people in the waiting room. Or C, maybe, coming in and out. Or C, which we have to talk about next week, is maybe leave a video feed. A live video feed, and then put it on a WhatsApp call the entire time, on a video FaceTime, and maybe that will also be leniency. We'll talk about it next week, but those are all potential solutions for that situation. But yes, it does apply by professionals as well. Okay, fine. So now, what about late at night babysitter? We have to go back, and we said we're going to give another solution for this person. Case was, parents went out to a wedding late at night. They're not coming home till late at night. And the boy is 10 years old, which is above the age Shulchan Aruch says Yichud applies to. And the babysitter is 17 years old. So in this case, you have Yichud. So what's the solution? Maybe you'll tell me, leave the door open. Who's going to come by? Who's going to come in? Nobody's going to come. What does it help to have the door open? It might as well be locked. It's the same thing. So what do you do in such a situation? Over there, the Minhat Ish writes that you have to give the keys to the neighbors. You have to tell the neighbors, 2 neighbors, here's the key. Please check on my son. Please, whenever you feel free, come to my house and walk in. That way, you made it a situation where people can come in, even though you know the parents are not coming till much later at night.
You have to mention that to the babysitter.
Yes.
No, it doesn't help. I don't think it makes it better. I don't think it makes it worse.
It's gonna make them kind of avoid anything.
Yeah, it's going to make them feel like there is no room to do anything. Even if you'll think, well, they're never going to do something. We said before in the beginning of the class, and apotropos la'arayot, the Gemara says there is no guardian to himself when it comes to immorality. Nobody's above the law. Nobody can say, I'm better than Yitzhara. Yeah.
What about cameras?
We said we're going to talk about it next week. We're going to get into the whole discussion if video makes it mutar for Yichud. Now,
If
you live in an apartment, if you're having a there and you live in an apartment building, you leave the door open. There's neighbors. There's people living across from you.
Good. Now, question is, at 11 o'clock at night, and you're not home yet. Are there people outside? Honestly,
In this neighborhood, yeah.
You have apartment buildings. You have
people are walking in that hallway at 11 o'clock at night. I'm asking you a question.
Let's say the door is right here.
I understand how it doesn't matter how far or close the door is. I'm asking you a question. There are people walking that hallway at 11 o'clock at night. Maybe one person you'll see coming late or going out. One person. Is that considered? Is that considered enough? It's considered. No, it's not considered enough. It's not considered enough. It's not.
You said every 3 minutes before.
Okay, is that gonna be? That's definitely not gonna be this case.
Wait, but they also have cameras outside in those hallways.
So good, okay.
Maybe not in the house, but in the hallway, so anybody could see what's going on.
Right, and they're gonna see what's gonna happen in your apartment.
That's a great question.
Right, so it's a problem. It's a problem.
Rabbi, you know those do not disturb ones? Can you just put like, please do disturb?
Feel free to come in.
We'll sell it. We'll put kosher Yichud innovation. Buy it. You know the kosher toothbrush. There's a kosher soap for Pesach. There's the kosher Yichud. Please do disturb.
So
Interesting.
Is it for a person to go knocking on doors in the middle of the night? Like, has anybody Yichud in here?
No, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think that's a good idea. Okay, fine. Now, what if you have a window? Let's say you have in your living room a big window, right? And you could see into your living room if the drapes are open. Over there, it has the same status as a door that's open. So you should know a window that you could see. If I could stand ground level and see into your living room, and that's where you're staying with that Yichud person, over there it will be a status of a door open. What?
It's gonna help us. That person can't really do anything.
What? Right, exactly. No, it's not that they're going to intervene and stop you. It's going to be that you're embarrassed. The fact that you're embarrassed, people see you, that's enough of a deterrent to block the Yichud.
Do animals count? Like, let's say if I...
No.
That's a good question, bro.
There was a story of one guy, he didn't do it because he saw
What if you have a
dog.
goldfish? Does it count?
Okay, fine. So now that's the first part of the class. Next week we have to speak about when her husband's in the city. What does it mean her husband's in the city, and when there's a leniency in regards to that. And we also have to speak about another potential leniency of when a person's wife is around, and when you have a shomer, a guardian, someone else who could be a watcher, who can be a guardian and protect you from Yehud. And then maybe we'll speak about what do people do when they're adopted. When people are adopted and they're not related, so how do they avoid the problem of Yehud? Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen Amen. Rabbi Chayak Shemer Zakadosh Baruch Hu. Ezra Kodesh Zeref Yichud Bat Shema Adonai Hafetz Iman Sidko Yaldi Torah V'Yadir.